All right, so we're diving deep into building a business that doesn't lead to burnout, which I think is something a lot of people are going for these days. And we've got a really interesting story today about Sofía Contreras. She's built and scaled like multiple businesses.
Yeah, she really has.
But prioritize sustainability, which is so key.
Yeah, and her story is interesting because it's not the typical path. You see people starting businesses.
Right.
She was actually a VC, like cutting $1 million deals.
Whoa, hold on. Wait, she walked away from that. Okay, most people would like kill for that.
Yeah, exactly. So she had a plan, though.
Okay.
This wasn't just like a follow your passion kind of thing. She really saw what wasn't, I guess, being taught in traditional business schools.
Okay,
She wanted to teach that.
So she saw a gap, and she was like, I'm going to fill it. I'm seeing some notes here.
Yeah.
She started, like way back on Instagram in 2018,
Yeah.
creating content, which, wow, that's like a lifetime ago when you think about it in the social media world.
Yeah, it was a totally different game back then.
Right.
And she was just like consistently showing up.
Wow.
Yeah, sharing her insights. And
Right.
it wasn't about like, chasing algorithms or anything like that. It was just like genuinely connecting with people, which I think is so important.
It's such a good point. And, it reminds me, this might tie into it. You had some research on like building trust.
Yeah.
And there was like, what was it, like a 7-hour rule or something?
Yeah, like 7 hours of exposure to build trust with someone.
And that's wild.
Yeah. And so you think about Sofía, she had been creating that content, since 2018.
Yeah, just putting in the work.
Building that trust bank. And then fast forward to 2020, she's speaking at a conference and boom, pandemic.
Oh, wow. Talk about a high stakes, like pivot.
Exactly. And she went from having 7 consulting clients down to 1.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
That's scary.
It is really scary. But that's where, what she'd built really paid off.
Interesting.
Because she had those people who were, she'd already invested the time in them.
Yeah.
So they were ready to kind of come and learn from her.
Wow. So it's like she almost unintentionally built this community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is something that, I think a lot of companies or businesses try to do. And it takes years.
Totally.
She kind of just did it by being herself and sharing her knowledge.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. Like, a lot of people try and build community later. She had it from the beginning.
Wow. So how does this tie into like how she actually, builds businesses, I guess, in a sustainable way?
So this is where it gets really interesting because she talks about, startups and she talks about online businesses. And she's like, I take what works from both.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
Right. So it's like the systems, the scalability of startups, but then it's the agility and like the quick validation of online businesses.
So you're blending it. You're not putting yourself in a box.
Exactly. And she talks about like the cult of the exit and how she's not interested in that.
Okay, so what is that? Break that down a little bit.
So it's this idea, especially in the startup world, where it's like, build it really fast, get a bunch of money, and then sell it, right? And it's very short-term focused.
Right.
And she's like, no, I want to build something that's going to last, that I don't always have to be the center of attention for.
That's a really good point, like working for you, not the other way around.
Yes, exactly.
Which I love that because so many people, they get into the hustle and grind, and it's just not sustainable.
It's not. It's really not.
So she's like, no, let's build it in a way that it can work for me.
Yeah, from the beginning.
I love it. Okay, so she talks about the Mr. Beast model, right? Can you explain that a bit?
Yeah, so Mr. Beast, huge following, right?
Huge.
Yeah. Like he's just everywhere.
Yep.
And he's built that first before he ever launched anything.
Okay.
And so then he's like, I'm going to do a burger thing.
Right.
I'm going to do this chocolate bar.
He's got a Walmart deal.
A Walmart deal, right.
It's crazy.
He leverages his audience so well.
Okay, so how can our listener, right, because like not everyone's going to be Mr. Beast.
Right.
So how can they apply that to their own business?
Yeah, and I think what's important to remember is Sofía has also built a multi-platform audience, right? Okay. She's got the podcast, she's got the newsletter, she's on YouTube, and it's about like showing up consistently in those places over time.
Got it. So it's not like an overnight thing.
Yeah.
It's playing the long game.
It is. It is.
Which, again, goes back to everything else she's talking about with sustainability and all of that.
Exactly. Like those early days on Instagram, just consistent effort over time.
Makes sense. Compound growth, right?
Yes, exactly.
Love it. So we've talked about like building the audience, but where do you even start? How do you actually do that?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people get overwhelmed by that. And what Sofía talks about is thinking like a media company.
Oh, interesting. Like a media company. Okay.
So not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Yep.
Right. She's on YouTube. She had that early Instagram. She has a podcast, the newsletter.
Yeah, spreading it out.
Exactly.
But how do you choose where to, like, focus your energy?
So she's a big advocate for YouTube and actually built and sold a business primarily through YouTube, just organically.
Wow, organically. That's amazing.
Yeah, which is crazy, right? And she talks about it as a long-term game.
Okay, yeah, because a lot of people, it does feel very, like, daunting, especially with how much is already on there.
Yeah.
But why does she think it's so powerful?
She's like, it's a search engine. Think about it when you want to learn something new, how to fix something, find a recipe.
Oh, YouTube,
Ah,
100%. You go to YouTube.
Yeah.
And so even if it's not like the trending video right now, in 3 years, 5 years, someone might be searching for that thing that you teach really, really well.
Right. So it's not as like, I don't know, the lifespan of something on like a TikTok or Instagram.
Ew.
It's very much like you put it out there and it lives.
And it can keep working for you.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And you're not having to like constantly be like, okay, new algorithm, new this, new that.
Right.
It's there. And it can keep like bringing people back to you.
So we're thinking multi-platform long game. YouTube's a good one.
Yeah.
What about, okay, so we have the audience, we're creating content. How do we actually make this a business?
Yeah. So this is where I think it gets really interesting and where her background is helpful.
Because she talks about your minimum viable audience.
Okay. Break that down.
Yeah, so instead of just saying, I need an audience, it's like, what's the minimum amount of people to make this work?
Oh, interesting.
Right. And who are those people? So it's not about getting 1 million followers. It's about like, I need 1,000 people who are obsessed with what I do.
Who are the right people, not just anybody.
Exactly. Exactly.
I like that. Okay. So how do you even like, I guess, find those people?
Yeah. So she has a few questions, right? Like, what problems are you really passionate about solving?
Okay. Yeah.
And then who are the people that have those problems?
Makes sense.
And where do they hang out online?
So it's like finding that, I don't know, I imagine like a Venn diagram.
Totally.
It's like what you're passionate about, what people need, and where they are. Yeah. Okay, I like that.
And you find that sweet spot and you're like, okay, this is where I'm creating content specifically for them.
And it's so true because you can't create something, that you think is cool.
Yeah,
It's got to be something that they actually need.
exactly. What does your ideal customer actually need, not what you think they need?
That's a good point. Yeah, it reminds me of that Seth Godin quote.
What's that?
It's like, don't find customers for your products. Find products for your customers.
Exactly, 100%.
Okay, so we found them. We're making the content. We're on YouTube. What's next?
So then she's like, okay, now we're talking about diversifying income streams, right? Like,
Okay, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
don't put all your eggs in one basket. And this is where her background in both of those worlds is really helpful.
So, like, what are some examples?
So you've got your digital products like ebooks and templates, online courses if you're into that, coaching or membership. You could do affiliate marketing.
It's really the sky's the limit, it sounds like.
Yeah, there are so many options. And she really emphasizes it's like, what are your skills, right?
Right.
What are you actually good at? What does your audience actually need from you? And how can you marry those things?
And what feels good to you, too. Because you don't want to create something that's, like, going to make you miserable.
Yeah, you're going to burn out. Exactly.
Right, exactly. Defeating the purpose.
Yes.
So it's all tying in.
It's all coming together.
Okay, I love it. So it's like you said, it's an investment. It's not going to happen overnight.
Totally. You said it at the beginning, she's been working on this since 2018.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's years of, showing up and building that trust.
It's playing the long game.
Playing the long game.
This is all so inspiring, like, honestly.
Yeah.
Hearing her story and her approach, like, it really gets you thinking.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there are some people listening right now
Yeah.
who are maybe feeling a little overwhelmed,
Totally.
Because it's a lot,
Sure.
especially if you're like, okay, I'm at 0. Where do I even start?
Yeah. And I think that's where sometimes it's easy to get caught up in that big picture.
Totally.
And Sophia has this great question that she asks.
Okay, what's that?
She's like, what one piece of valuable content could you create right now?
Ooh, I like that.
Right.
It's not about, like, launching the whole thing.
No.
It's just like, what's one thing you could do?
Yeah, what's one thing right?
Yeah.
That could help someone, some problem you've solved, some skill that you've mastered. And how do you share that in a way that feels really good to you?
Not just like a quick tip, but like something actually meaty and valuable.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that, I think, goes back to, like you were saying earlier, building the trust.
Yeah, it's that first, like, planting the seed, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to be this big oak tree right away, but it's like, how do we get that starting?
Totally. And it's showing up authentically.
Yes.
And, like, not expecting anything in return.
Right, giving, giving, giving.
Yes, exactly.
Because you've been given so much
Well, that's a good point.
to get to where you are, so how can you then share that?
This has been awesome, I feel like. So eye-opening
Yeah.
to hear her story and to know that it doesn't have to be this, like, hustle and grind
Yeah, you don't have to burn out
to be successful.
to be successful. Yeah, you can build something that feels really good.
That you love and that's sustainable.
Yeah, that's sustainable, exactly. And you're right, the first step is often the hardest.
Yeah.
So what is that one thing that you can create?
You got it. Just one thing.
One thing.
And who knows, it might inspire somebody else to do the same.
Exactly.
Love it. All right. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.